بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my brothers and sisters in Islam. As you all know, this year it's been a special Ramadan and it's going to be an even more special Eid. And this year we've been so good in Ramadan that our mashaykh and our organizations and our scholars are going to reward us with 2 Eids. So we get double the celebration this year, inshallah. In all seriousness, my brothers and sisters in Islam, we're all aware of the recent controversy that is going on between ANIC, the National Imams Council, who is celebrating Eid on Saturday, and the LMA, the Lebanese Muslim Association, who has assigned the Eid to Friday. And even though they both follow the calculation method of determining the start and end of Ramadan, yet they've come both to 2 different conclusions. And naturally so, there's been an enormous reaction from the community. There's been an enormous uproar from the community. How did we get to such a situation? And the situation has gotten so farcical that places like Umar Masjid in Auburn, they posted a message on Facebook that they're going to hold 2 Eid prayers and 2 khutbahs. So they're going to cater to both. If you're celebrating Eid on Friday, then there's going to be Eid prayer on Friday, and if you're celebrating Eid on Saturday, there'll be an Eid day on Saturday. And so then you start thinking, how farcical is this? Which opinion do you actually hold? How can you hold both opinions at the same time? Eid can either be Friday or Saturday. What does the Imam do? Does the Imam fast if he believes Eid is Saturday? Does he fast Friday but still hold the Eid prayer for those that come on Friday, even though he believes Eid is Saturday? Or if he believes it is Saturday, does he break his fast on Friday and lead the Eid prayer, but then he celebrates Eid on Saturday? So the situation is really farcical. And the community is in an uproar. And everything is lighting up social media, the websites. And so sensing this backlash, ANIC and the LMA decided to send 2 representatives, 2 young sheikhs. And they appeared on a discussion, a program called Real Talk. And they sent them out to try and calm the situation down and to put the Muslims' minds at rest. Really, basically, it's a PR stunt. There was a 20-minute interview, and I'll put the link to the interview, inshallah, below in the description box, whoever wants to watch the whole interview. I'm not going to post the whole interview now. I'm just going to react to a small part of that interview. But if you want to watch it, the link is in the description box. But basically, it's a PR stunt. And after 20 minutes, you don't really come to any conclusion, and they don't come to any conclusion. The situation is still the same. It's probably even more confusing than it was. Basically, each sheikh comes, the one that represents ANIC, the one that represents the LMA, and they put forth their position, and they're both holding their ground. And the interviewer, he doesn't really press the issues. He doesn't really criticize. He doesn't ask the tough questions. He basically just allows them, gives them a platform to put forth their positions. And so after 20 minutes, we're none the wiser about the whole situation, and we're still going to have 2 Eids. So let's listen, inshallah, to a small part of this interview, a small clip, and from that we'll react to it, and we'll see that really, out of this small clip, we understand the main gist of the whole discussion.
Hey, are we going to split our family, and each of us is going to have Eid on a different day? I tell him, Akhi, please. Wallahi, this is not the intention. And so long as the mashayikh from these 2 organizations have placed it on themselves, it's not upon you as the lay person to then work out which one is right, which one is wrong, which one am I going to follow. Is there an opinion out there? Is it valid? Yes. Khalas. You are not required to do anything else. Keep your family together. Do not break the unity in your family as an individual. So you don't go and break your fast a day later after your father. Keep them together. If your father, wants to understand the situation a bit more, maybe go back and forth, no problem. Speak to your father. But if your father's being adamant, no, this is the day on Friday, and you want to come out and say, well, nah, it's going to be on Saturday, don't pick a fight. It's not between you and your father. Leave the mashayikh to sort this out, right? Even if we don't reach a conclusion, right? At the end of the day, you are not required by Allah Azza wa Jal to work it out, because you don't have the ahliyah. You don't have the capability or the knowledge to do that. So what's required by you then is just to unify your own family.
And in fact, in Sheikh Muhammad,
So that's the Sheikh speaking. And really, I've chosen this bit of the interview because really it sums up what their message is. Basically, they're saying, look, we're the scholars, we're the organizations, we know, you guys are the laymen. You don't have knowledge. So just leave it to the sheikhs. We understand, and we're going to solve the situation. And we say to the sheikh, with all due respect, we've left it to you guys. And what have you solved? You've solved absolutely nothing. You further confuse the situation, and if you end up with a farcical situation where you have Eid on 2 separate days and people mosque catering for Eid on 2 separate days. And we say to you, Sheikh, we're not laymen. You know, these organizations, they always fall back upon this line for many years. Anytime they are counted, anytime they are taken to task or criticized, this is their go-to line. You're layman, you don't understand, we're sheikhs. No, we do understand. Every Muslim has a responsibility to understand a minimum amount of knowledge about his deen, about the Quran, about Arabic, about the sciences of hadith, about usul, about the sources of sharia, the 4 sources of sharia, the Quran, the sunnah, the ijma', the qiyas, where the ahkam are extracted from. So we have this knowledge. We understand our deen. We're not stupid. So we're going to account you. We're not just going to blindly follow you and just, as you say, leave it to the sheikhs. They'll solve it, because you haven't solved anything. We're not going to be like Banu Israel, the Yahud and the Christians, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about them in the Quran, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. Allah said that Jews and the Christians, they took their rabbis and their priests as lords besides Allah. Ibn Kathir, he narrates an explanation of this ayah in a hadith. One of the Sahaba asked the Messenger, a messenger of Allah, because he used to be a Christian, we didn't worship them, meaning our rabbis and our priests, because Allah says, اتخذوهم أرباب, lords. Prophet said, yes. They made the halal haram and they made the haram halal, and you follow them. فَذَلِكَ عِبَادَتُهُمْ إِيَّاهُمْ. That's their worship of them. Why? Because whatever the rabbis and the priests said, they blindly followed. So we're not going to blindly follow you and you keep using this line on us, we're the sheikhs and you're the layman. Now we're going to account you, because we don't want to end up in a position that the Jews and the Christians did, where they took their rabbis and the priests as lords besides Allah. In the end, you are human beings, you're not prophets. You're not above criticism. You're not sacred. When you do wrong, you're going to be criticized and accounted, and this is part of our deen. So the sheikh says, look, you're the layman, leave it to the sheikhs. And he says something ridiculous. He says, look, in every household, we don't want disputes in every household. If the father follows the LMA, he says Eid is on Friday, and the son says Eid is on Saturday, he says to the son, look, leave your opinion and follow the opinion of the father, so you can have unity in the family. This is nonsensical. The deen is not a plaything. You don't hold opinions and then play around with them. No, I'm going to leave the opinion even though I believe it is Friday is part of Ramadan. I'm just going to break my fast because my father is following a different opinion, right? The deen is not like that. You can't play with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this manner. So in the end, what's led to this situation is that had you come forth to the Ummah and presented a legitimate Islamic opinion, then the Ummah would have understood, at least you are following Islam, and in Islam there can be differences of opinion. That's valid. But you are following an opinion that has no validity in Islam and no basis in Islam, this method of calculations. This has nothing to do with our history and nothing to do with our madhahib and nothing to do with our hadith. So this is one of the major issues. You're following the method of calculations, and from that method you both arrived at 2 different conclusions. The LMA said we follow calculations, but global calculations, global sighting, so for them Eid is Friday. At least with their position I can understand they follow a certain logic where they said the moon is born on Thursday, therefore Eid is Friday. With Anik, they said the moon is born, using the same calculations, the moon is born Thursday, yet Eid is Saturday. What kind of logic is that? Why? Because they say we use calculations with the possibility of sighting, local sighting. So they say locally in Australia, there's no possibility of the moon being sighted. Therefore, Eid is Saturday. But we say to you, you're just playing with words and technicalities. You don't use citing. Why are you even hiding behind this? If you use citing, then you would have just waited Thursday night to see if we actually cite the moon. That's called citing. But you're using calculations, but you're hiding behind this slogan because you're going to hold Eid Saturday regardless of any sightings. So you've used an opinion that has no valid basis in Islam, and you don't even follow your own logic. And when you say we follow local sighting, you say you look at Australia and you mention Perth in the statement, Western Australia. We ask the question, is the moon only, is there a moon specifically for the borders of Australia? It doesn't go outside those borders. If you follow local and regional sighting, there's a Muslim nation in Indonesia with 300 million Muslims. And if you're following the sighting of Perth, Indonesia as a time zone, it's 1 hour behind Western Australia. So why don't you take into account their sighting as well if you actually follow this local sighting of yours that you're saying? Another point is, when it comes time to Big Eid, if you say that we're principled and we follow local sighting, when it comes time to Big Eid, we know the pilgrims that go to Mecca, they follow the sighting of Saudi Arabia, the days that are set for Arafah and the Big Eid. Here in Australia, every single year, there's never any disputes about the day of Arafah or Big Eid, the Eid of sacrifice. We all follow what Saudi says. We never hear these discussions of yours about calculations and local calculations and global calculations. Every single year, you always follow the Saudi days. So what's happening that in Ramadan, you follow calculations, and when the Big Eid comes along, you let go of those calculations. If, as according to you say in an interview, you are principled and you have a principled position based upon Sharia evidences. Right? We say you don't have Sharia evidences and you don't have a principled position. The reason you are using the calculation method, and the leader of ANIC, he's come out and he's given us the reason. There's an interview that he had with this same program called Real Talk, I think it was a year ago, discussing a whole range of issues, but in that, a small part of it was discussing Ramadan and sighting. And I'll post the link to that interview in the description. You can watch this interview. And the moon sighting part, it's not that long. But basically, Sheikh Shadi, he says, look, we know there's fiqh about global moon sighting and local calculation. He said, put all that aside. He said, in the end, we can put the fiqh, there's a practical discussion that we need to take into account. He said, I get bombarded with calls all the time about professionals, doctors, lawyers, workers. They need to plan their days. They need to speak to their employer. They need to assign their days off. He said, I even get calls from the local authorities about the Muslim prison population, the Muslim inmates. He said the authorities call him and ask him, we need to cater for the Muslim population in prison. We need to know when the start of Eid is, Ramadan is, and when the Eid is. Right? So he himself admits it. He gets bombarded with all these claims. So he said, in the end, what am I going to do? I'm just going to tell all these people, look, just wait for my message. We'll let you know Thursday night, Friday morning. He said, we can't do that. It's not practical. Right? So the reason they follow calculations is not because of evidences, not because of principles. We know the only evidence in Islam are two opinions. You either follow global moon sighting based on the hadith, sumu li ru'yatihi, or the regional moon sighting based on the hadith of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Those are the only two opinions that are acceptable in Islam. You follow calculations has no basis in Islam whatsoever. And the reason is what Sheikh Shadi said. It's for practical reasons. It's for political reasons. It's for economic reasons. You need to assign the start of Ramadan and the end of Ramadan. Why? Because you got centers that you want to open, you got money that you want to collect, you got politicians that you want to invite, you got dignitaries, important people. It's a lot more simplified process for you to assign the days of Eid. So this is the real reason why you are following this opinion. And in the end, you're both clashing even though you both follow calculations. Why? Because in the end, organizations, each one wants to take the lead. Each one claims they represent the Muslim community. And so there's going to be an internal struggle, and this is just a natural outcome of when you have people that follow pragmatism, and instead of following Sharia and evidence, they follow their own whims and desires for political and practical purposes. And this is the outcome you've led us to. And this is exactly what is going on. So the Ummah There should be a backlash, there should be a reaction against these imams, against these organizations for playing around with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for making a mockery of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for using the deen for their own whims and power struggles. There should be an enormous reaction, and the ummah needs to wake up. But an important point to highlight through all of this, because there's been some commentary that, look, why is everyone making such a fuss about that we don't have unity for the same day of Eid? It doesn't really matter what days we have Eid on. We can have Eid on different days. It's not a big issue. We say no. Unity is a vital issue. It's an important issue. And the only way the ummah is ever going to get unity, not only on the Ramadan issue, on all issues, is when we have one Islamic state, one Islamic government that controls all the Muslim lands under one leader. That leader applies and uses the Sharia methods, the Sharia evidences, and he assigns Ramadan according to the sighting of the moon, and we break our fast according to the sighting of the moon, and we all have Eid on the same day. And today, because of modern technology and communication, within seconds you can let the whole ummah know when exactly Ramadan starts and when exactly Ramadan ends. And so this is the bigger picture that we need to keep in mind out of this whole discussion, my brothers and sisters in Islam. Please, if you like this discussion, please like the video, please subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's happening with the community, you want to understand and account our organizations and our mashayikh, you want to understand the bigger issues that are affecting the community here in Australia, please subscribe and support this channel for future videos, bi'idhnillah.